How is everybody doing today? And in this video, we are going to be doing, of course, with how we do in every patch. We're going to be talking about the Prydwen tier list. And with the Prydwen tier list, we actually have some changes to talk about when it comes to all the things they added with the tier list. And then we're going to go straight into it, talking about Aventurine, because for some reason I forgot to do his video when it came to his patch, and then talking about Robin and also talking about Harmony MC. So we have a lot to go through. We have some changes to go through. We have the actual tier list to go through. Before we get into all that, make sure to leave a like, comment, sub. Let me know how much you're enjoying Robin at the moment. If you didn't get Robin, let me know how much you're enjoying Topaz. If you didn't get either, let me know how excited you are for any of the new characters that you're probably saving up for. Like for me, Firefly, I can't wait. But going into the video right now, looking at the changes that Prydwen themselves made to the tier list, the first one that we see is the letter system is now changing into the number system, which I currently love this a crazy amount. I think a lot of people are closely associating the characters with the letters too heavily, looking at maybe some of the characters getting put into B, saying that now these characters aren't worth it anymore. These characters look like they're super bad now, they're in B, when necessarily that wasn't the case. I still think of it as these tiers are just to a means to an end to talk about where the threshold of power is between each character. Are you stronger than this character in what they do or what they're able to do? No? Okay, you're bumped down a tier. Are you stronger than that character? No? Okay, you're bumped down another tier. Does that mean the character that we bumped down 2 tiers is absolutely dog water because of it? No, not really. It just means that they're not able to compete with the characters above them, but they're still able to do damage. And something that we also need to talk about as well is that they also signify this with the new meta line, showing us possibly who are the god tier characters that are basically a universal buff to your account versus characters that are only good in certain sections or characters that you just don't want to build. Which I can't wait to see who's a part of this, because I have no idea, which I can't wait to look at that. But other than that, looking at the rest of the stuff that they have, we also see that they're adding half tiers, because sometimes the characters don't need to be lumped up with other characters. Sometimes when there's characters that are not as strong as the people above them, but also not as weak as the people below them, then it leaves a problem. Which do I put them on, since it's not an ordered tier list? Well, now we have that extra half section to signify and also take some characters out of certain tiers that aren't stronger than some group and isn't weaker than another group. So I actually like that they're adding this as well. I know a lot of people weren't as excited to have something like this in the tier list, but I do think it's needed at this point in the game. With how many characters that we have, I think it's okay to add this at the current moment. One thing that they are adding as an informational basis, just like the meta lines, we do also have tags to signify what they're able to do or what they are most known for when it comes to being able to debuff, dot, break, advance forward, buff, delay, energy, SP plus, and SP negative. So there's a lot of really good stuff to see with the informational basis they're giving to newer players with the meta lines and also the tags. And then other than that, the light cone criteria is adding in gacha cones, if I'm not wrong, but not the signature cones. I might be wrong with that. I think it says changing the criteria from only allowing exclusively free light cones to also including S5 gacha light cones. Okay, so stuff like memories of the past, stuff like sword play, these are now going to be added in, included in the thought process of looking at these characters coming out. And then the last bit is just talking about Acheron and the Trinity of Harmony. We're just gonna get into a quick minute. So let's go ahead and start talking about the tier itself. And this looks so much different than what we've seen before. Holy crap. All right, going into the first tier, of course, tier 0. These are the god tier characters. And as you can see, none of these spots for specialist and also amplifier are filled up, which I don't think is a problem in my honest opinion. We'll talk about it with the amplifier class. In my honest opinion, I think I do have something to say about this, but right now, as we know, damage dealer tier 0, Acheron 100% deserves to be by herself, and I think no one can refute this at this point. The damage that she's able to do, the mechanic that she has with her slash dream, being able to get energy, quote unquote, from other enemies or other allies on the team, and this can only be improved as more debuff characters come out. This is just going to be an absolutely monster house of a unit when it comes to the damage that they're able to do and the longevity of the DPS itself. I am really excited to see what they're going to do with Acheron, and I can't wait to see what we're going to be seeing with Buhil eventually as well. If he's going to be able to match up with Acheron, or is he going to shift people down? Is he going to be added to 0.5? We'll have to wait and see. I cannot wait for that to happen, but honestly, there's nothing or no complaints from me, in my honest opinion, with the damage dealer, with her being by herself. So that is fine. Specialist is empty. In my honest opinion, I do think this is fair. with how looking at Kafka and Black Swan currently in the meta, I do think it's okay to leave the specialist for tier 0 by itself at the current moment. Amplifier by itself as well, with Sustain having Aventurine and Fu Xuan. So in my opinion, looking at what we have right now in regards to Aventurine and Fu Xuan, and having REHOO, who I said previously needed to be an S+, I can kind of see why now. Looking at Aventurine, looking at Fu Xuan, these two characters excel, and I mean excel on something way crazier than something that REHOO is about to do. And what is that? REHOO does give a great amount of buffs. Her energy buff, her attack buff is absolutely monumental to a lot of different teams in the game. But when you look at Aventurine and you look at Fu Xuan, they're able to provide other crazy things too. Aventurine can do damage, he can debuff, he can buff. He has infinite shields. While Fu Xuan, she gives crit rate, she gets immunity to CC for one time, and then she also has the ability to have damage redirection and damage mitigation. So the fact that they have these properties and also have an almost infinite way of sustaining the team without ever having to worry about using skill points, without ever having to worry about using some type of mechanic to keep them alive 100% of the time. Aventurine, Fu Xuan, they're basically God mode for whatever team you put them on, and we've known this for a very long time. Of course, Aventurine is pretty brand new, but with what I'm saying right now, he's shown his promise. His infinite shields are absolutely amazing. The damage he does is pretty good. And the other capabilities with the buffing and debuffing, it's all really nice in my honest opinion. So I can 100% see why someone like Fu Xuan and why someone like Aventurine, these characters are in the tier 0 for sustain, because it's almost impossible to die with them. While for REHOO, although her buffs are amazing, she is a healer at the end of the day. She can prevent you from dying with healing you back up and also having the continuous healing. But if you were to get one shot, which a lot of these characters are not able to do, or some of the content in this game allows some characters to do this, then you can't really save yourself and you can't really heal yourself back to life unless you have some eidolons for REHOO. While someone like Aventurine and someone like Fu Xuan can fully complete and fully stop the one shot from happening in the first place. So I can 100% see why these characters are in tier 0 by themselves at the current moment, while someone that I was basically advertising to be in tier 0 or an S+ would still be where she's at right now. So I think this is honestly fair in my honest opinion. Going to the next tier, which is going to be looking at Dan Heng and Jing Liu. These guys are still amazing powerhouses at the end of the day with their respective teams. Jing Liu being as godly as she is, and Dan Heng putting the absolutely massive amount of adjacent damage as he does. We honestly, with Sparkle as well coming to the game, have seen him basically rise in power by a great amount, and he's basically got his perfect team at the current moment, which is a pretty cool thing. So I don't have any complaints with tier 0.5 for the damage dealers. The specialist tab is where it gets a little spicy before we get into the full-on ghost chili pepper on the side. But Kafka and Black Swan sharing a spot previously that a lot of people didn't, I guess you could say, agree with at first, with Kafka always being the person that, oh, they're always going to be at the top of the list, they're always going to be by themselves because they enable the dot team to do what they do. While this is true, I do think Black Swan, now that we're looking at what she's able to do, with her being basically nicknamed the 5-star Pella, because it is true at this point, the skill is able to reduce defense, the ult's able to give damage received, all that different type of stuff, really good buffs for basically every team possible. And then looking at her Arcana, looking at how future-proof that mechanic is in whole, with it being able to stack to 50, if I'm not wrong, it's only a matter of time before we get more units or more dot units who's able to re-trigger their own dot even more to give more Arcana stacks, or have another re-trigger come out giving Black Swan another buff, or just overall having characters that re-trigger their dots multiple times to help out Arcana do a massive amount of damage, of course, with the supportive properties that Black Swan has in whole. So looking at what Black Swan's able to do, looking at what Kafka's able to do, I would 100% see them now at the same tier. Previously, where I would say, no, Kafka's at the top, she's the only one at the top. Now that we've had Black Swan for the amount of time that we've had, I do think that looking at Black Swan and looking at Kafka, they both are pretty similar in what they're able to do, and both have the longevity and also the investment value 100% to get any account going. I don't see Kafka or Black Swan ever leaving this tier in my honest opinion, but I do see someone eventually coming into that tier 0 spot as a specialist, which, holy crap, someone as crazy as Black Swan and Kafka, that is going to be something to see. But to get into the Omega spicy conversation with Robin, Ruame, and Sparkle being in 0.5, with nobody being in the top spot for tier 0. Now, this is honestly really cool to look at. I just love the way this new tier list is in whole. As you see, these are all the Apex characters. These are all the goated characters. You put any of these characters in this top portion, you're good. You have a goated character for whatever slot you need for whatever team. Acheron, Kafka, Ruame, Aventurine. You can put any of these guys and they're all goated. So looking at the amplifier section, they have all 3 of these guys in the same tier. And the reason they said this is for a reason I said beforehand in another video, where these guys are basically the whole meta in itself. Ruame, Sparkle, and Robin all encompass every team that is under the Honkai Star Rail universe, I guess you could say, or the Honkai Star Rail meta. And that's why all these guys are technically in the same spot. They all cover the whole meta in its equal parts, with Sparkle being able to help with hyper carry, with Ruame being able to help with break and also sub DPS teams, while Robin is there for follow-up and also other sub DPS teams. So they all cover equal portions or a couple of portions of the meta by themselves. Now, me personally, after playing Robin for so long, after using Sparkle, after using Ruame, although I agree with this, that the meta is basically encompassed by these 3 characters in the single group by themselves in Amplifier, but I would have to say at the current moment that I do think Ruame should probably be in tier 0 by herself. The only reason I say this is because, although, as I said before, I agree with the sentiment that these guys are the meta itself. All 3 of them cover their own aspects and are good in one way or another for those teams. Ruame is what I would say a complete plug and play character that as soon as you throw them on the team, they basically make that team function ×2. You don't have to worry about, in my honest opinion, looking for the most optimal situation when it comes to using something like Robin's ultimate, or being able to play around using Robin's ultimate, or having someone like Sparkle, who we know uses a lot of speed or has a tendency to be able to not bring your characters all the way to the top of the list, where enemies can still hit you. There's still some problems that can end up in that nature. There's still broken characters and really crazy characters at the end of the day, don't get me wrong. But looking at Ruame and how little she needs, and also how absolutely amazing she's able to do different qualities, as of course having a route of sustain with the delay, being able to help out characters like Harmony Trailblazer with their mechanics, being able to help with the break damage that she gives in comparison to Robin with her damage on ultimate as well. There's so many things that Ruame is able to do, but she has a lot less in stipulations when it comes to all the things at the current moment in time that all these teams are able to have. Sparkle's really cool, but she takes some investment. Robin's really cool, but she requires the player to make sure they know what they're doing and to make sure they get the most optimal situation with having Robin on the team. While someone like Ruame, you throw them down, you use a skill, and then you basic attack for the rest of the turn, and you use your ultimate whenever it comes up. There's really not much else to do with Ruame, and she's able to do all that she does. The speed increase, the break effect increase, the break damage, the penetration, the damage boost, SP positive. She has it all as a support, in my honest opinion, and a lot less thought process into using her, making it super crazy ease of use for the character itself. So although I do think that this character and all the other characters around her with with Robin and with Sparkle, that they can encompass the whole meta, I think in terms of a support character themselves, Ruame might have to be in tier 0 by herself. Although I do think Robin and Sparkle are just basically, like I said before, in their own group and helping out their own group as best as they possibly can. But I do think Robin or Ruame, I keep getting their names wrong because their names both start with an R. I can't get that to stop. But I do think Ruame should probably get thrown up to the top of tier 0. Now looking at how Ruame is, and now seeing how I've been playing with Robin for a very long time, and also with Sparkle and what she's able to do, I still think that Ruame deserves to be by herself. We've already talked about REHOO. She's absolutely amazing. Someone I've always said that should be at the top of the list. But in comparison to what Pyrdwen and what Aventurine are able to do, I would honestly keep her there. And I think that's a very generous spot to put her, or a very fair spot to put her. Going into tier 1, Dr. Ratio by himself, honestly, I can agree. I think I might as well put someone like Cele on top and put her in tier 1. Only because I have been hearing EO out. I have been hearing other characters, or not characters, other people talk about sell it and use sell it with updated relics, with the more fine-tuned relics that we give these other characters. And she still has the potential. She still has that damage that she's able to consistently zero cycle every piece of MOC that we've seen for a very long time. And there hasn't been an MOC where she quite literally hasn't been able to zero cycle. So I 100% think that at least Ratio and Sela should probably share a tier at the current moment. I need to definitely see some more things about her, but I don't think she's in the same tier that they have Clara, Jingyuan, and Qingxue, and I think they really do need to bump her up to tier 1. Going into Topaz and Harmony MC. Topaz, I can agree, under Kafka, under Black Swan, 100%. I think that is fair. She is pretty great and really good investment value for the follow-up tech team. Is she 100% needed for it? Not really, but is she still a good investment? Yes. At the end of the day, yes, she's still a good character for it. Harmony MC, with their new super break mechanic and what they're able to do right now, sadly they are kind of tied to having Ruan Mei on the team to be able to give the best efficiency or the best product of their kit, because you do have to have the enemy broken for quite a bit of time to be able to even use the super break mechanic, because they do have to be broken in order for you to hit them while they have no shield, which converts the toughness damage they would have taken into damage itself. So that is the only stipulation that they have right now. One day I think we're going to see that on a 5-star character that is a limited character with a more broken version of it, probably, but we'll have to wait and see. I do think they're pretty strong at the current moment in comparison to someone like Topaz. I think that's honestly a fair assessment in my opinion. Going into the next one, Ting Yun, I 100% agree. I 100% agree that Ting Yun is literally right under these characters. And in all honesty, I know a lot of people have been looking at it with these characters up top, Robin, Ruan Mei, Sparkle, and then almost lumping in Ting Yun with them. While I do think Ting Yun is an absolutely crazy character with the attack boost, with the damage boost, with also the massive energy gain on ultimate, in comparison to those 3 characters at the top, I think having Ting Yun literally 1 tier under or 0.5 under isn't fair assessment. 100%. And the fact that she's a 4-star and is that high, I 100% think that is a crazy thing for a 4-star to be able to be capable of doing. I think that's a really cool thing for Ting Yun. Now we have in the sustain tab, we have Luocha by themselves versus someone like Gallagher. And looking at Gallagher and Luocha, I 100% see why Luocha, in the same way I see Aventurine and Fushun where they're at, and why I think it's a fair assessment to put someone like Ho-Ho a tier under them. I can also see why they have Luocha above Gallagher. I do think Gallagher provides a lot more in what he's able to do with having the almost semi-Luocha kit in his kit, but also the added benefit of being able to give more break effect damage, which we're seeing Harmony Trailblazer, Ruan Mei, and a lot of other characters being able to benefit from this. Even someone like Boohill in the future might be able to benefit from this as well. So he does provide a lot more, but the ease of use, the almost not plug and play, but the almost auto brain you have to be with Luocha, you basically have to forget he's there and just spam basic. I can 100% see in a sustained standpoint, in the ease of use standpoint for Luocha, why he would be above Gallagher. Gallagher, in my opinion, still holds a little bit more to Luocha in terms of what he's able to provide, but I can't say that Gallagher beats out Luocha in the job that he's supposed to do, which is keep the team alive. There are instances where Gallagher, well, a well-built Gallagher won't fall into this for the most part, but if you medium invest into him, there might be situations where you might end up getting KO'd or you might end up getting, you know, having that one character that gets targeted, and Luocha can't just, you know, he auto heals. While Gallagher, you just gotta wait. You gotta wait till hopefully that enemy doesn't just one-shot them or doesn't KO them immediately, where Luocha can just interrupt them and straight up literally heal them mid-turn. So that is something that Luocha holds over Gallagher. I do think in terms of buffs and other capabilities that Gallagher does hold it over Luocha, but in terms of sustain and ease of use, Luocha 100% wins that battle. Going into the next tier, which is tier 1.5, Clara, Jingyuan, Qingxue. I think this is fair. Qingxue still has a massive amount of power when it comes to what she's able to provide when you have the right luck. And her being lower than a good amount of these characters, I think is a fair assessment. I do think Stella should be bumped up to tier 1. With Clara, Jingyuan, Qingchui, I think this is a fair grouping of characters to be in 1.5. These all hold their own in all honesty. And I do think, which will be in its own separate video, that characters now that are single target and also in the AoE fashion are getting heavily buffed. Characters in Erudition, Hunt are about to get a humongous buff with one of the bosses that you see later on in the story. And also I think it's coming up in the new MOC, which I do need to check before I start talking about it, but I'll get into that when I do check it. But I do think this is a fair tier to put them on. I do think Stella should be bumped up to at least tier 1 until I get to see a little bit more from her. Maybe we might see her 0.5. That might be a hot take, I don't know. But definitely I do see her as a tier 1 character. We'll have to wait and see. Bronya and Silwolf being under Tingyun, I do understand why Tingyun is above them 100%, only because Tingyun, in my opinion, is a little bit more universal and provides a lot more. That energy boost that she gives on ult is just way too insane, and the attack buff is really good too. While someone like Bronya, the tag that you see under her right now, she's Omega SP negative, and I mean super SP negative. You're basically never going to basic attack with her unless you're doing some crazy setup. And then someone like Silverwolf being on top of Pella, which we know has been a controversial, I guess you say, fight between the two, with Silverwolf being in here, with Pella being down here. And right now I can see why. I do think with Silverwolf's inclusion or Acheron's inclusion, a lot of the Nihility characters got bumped up. But the one thing that Silverwolf has that no other character in the game has, Intel Boohill, which we'll see how that basically changes up the rating for Silverwolf. But for Silverwolf herself, she still has the implant that helps out an enormous amount of teams, especially with characters like Ruan Mei, characters like Harmony Trailblazer. These two characters thrive on characters being broken, and if you can brute force a character being broken with Silverwolf implanting that bug and then having whatever DPS is there and allowing them to break the shield, allowing them to deal with the super break or whatever you want to say when it comes to brute forcing content, which he's still able to allow you to do. This is a valuable aspect to the character that not a lot of people remember for Silverwolf. I know it's the main portion of her kit, but we still have to remember, if you have Silverwolf, you can brute force any content that you want, literally, because you can literally manipulate the bug itself to give you whatever element you want. So that is why Silverwolf, I think, is still above Pella, although Pella is what we would say is still a really strong character with what she's able to do with the resolution light cone, with being able to have the basic attack, basically do the job that you need to do, being very SP positive, and also having a really quick ult to come back and an AoE defense drop as well. While Silverwolf, same thing goes. Her basic attack does everything for her. Her skill gives the implant. Her ult hits nastily hard now, with also the massive amount of defense drop that she has. So I do think it's fair to have these two where they're at. I think the implanted bug is the only reason why Silverwolf at the current moment is above Pella and will be above Pella for a very long time, until we end up getting AoE Silverwolf, and then it's Jover at that point. But going on to the next thing is going to be the last tier of the meta characters, which I said this is really cool that they added these little meta lines to show you these are the god tier characters. You pull for any of them, you're good. These are all the meta characters. You pull for them, you have a pretty good character to use for any of the content that you have at the current moment. And this is the last tier. We currently see Blade. Sadly, I would have to agree that he's lower on the list. I think him being in the middle is honestly very generous. In my opinion, I do think he's very generous. He is in a moment at the current moment where Blade doesn't output the right amount of damage for the content we're in right now. We don't have content where we have to worry about sustain, I guess you could say. A lot of people are doing zero sustain. A lot of people are able to beat content without having a sustain, or at least if they do have a sustain, these sustains help out other teams than something like Blade would want. Blade is too sustain heavy or too keeping yourself alive heavy with not enough damage to output versus someone like Sele, someone like Jingyuan, someone like Dr. Ratio, Jingyu, Don Hung, and Acheron. You cannot in any way, shape, or form, sadly, say that any of these characters that you see above him do less damage than Blade himself. Blade right now, sadly, although he is very good in keeping himself alive, he doesn't put out the damage to be able to compete against these other guys. Now, the thing that I do like about Blade is because he's very SP, I would say efficient. I wouldn't really put SP positive here because he isn't. He's more SP efficient, or SP equals, I guess you could say. Maybe that might be a tag or something they could add, because you waste 1 skill point and then you don't have to use them for 3 turns. Now you don't get them back, but you don't have to waste them for 3 turns, which allow your other characters like your supports, your sustains, to be able to build up the skill points for your other DPS, which a lot of people are running Jingliu with Blade, and with Robin coming into the game, we also have a way for them to do some more damage as well, with being able to advance forward Jingliu, with being able to advance forward Blade, which ends up giving Blade more stacks, allowing him to do more damage, which is a really good thing in whole. So he is getting small buffs as time goes by, which is really cool. So right now, him being in the meta section, I won't complain about it. I think it's pretty cool that he is here, in my honest opinion, versus all these other damage dealers at the current moment. And then for the specialists, Luca, Sampo, and Shui Yi, I do think at the current moment, with how this game is looking, with the break effect meta creeping in, I can 100% see Shui Yi get bumped up to 1.5, especially since they're considering E6 Shui Yi. I 100% can agree, because as you know, the criteria says itself. If you have a gacha Lycone, it can be S5. Shui Yi with the Misha Lycone giving 30% crit rate with a fat ton of break effect helps her out a enormous amount, especially when she's E6. Going with what Harmony Trailblazer is able to give, going with what Ruan Mei is able to give, and with other characters included giving her energy, or characters like Gallagher being able to help with break effect as well, and the break damage, I think Shui Yi has a chance to be put up by herself in 1.5, in my honest opinion. While Luca and Sampo, as you may know, right now, if you don't have Black Swan, you're probably using these characters for dot whenever is their appropriate weakness. They're still pretty good. Luca and Sampo both giving damage modifiers with their ultimate. Luca being able to re-trigger his ultimate, or re-trigger his bleed with his basic, and Sampo being able to do the same with his skill. Really good stuff in my opinion. I do think this is fair. Pella, we already talked about her in regards to Silverwolf. And then we do have Sustain with Bailu, Japard, and Lynx. I 100% agree with these characters on where they are, because they do provide... It's hard. I would say for Gallagher to be above these characters, correct, in my opinion. I do think Gallagher, and I see that I'm hovering over them, my bad. Gallagher being where he is, I can agree, because he does give a crazy amount of things, plus the Luocha Light kit that he has from the ultimate. He also has a full team heal, if I'm not wrong, when he uses enhanced basic, and then he uses it on the character that's been ulted. So that is a really good thing. That's a full team heal, super fast Luocha Light kit, and also helps into the meta that we're going into, which is break effect. Now talking about Bailu, Japard, and Lynx, I was about to make a case for Lynx, because I feel like the added utility for the taunt is really good. But now that we have someone like Aventurine helping out Clara, that took a spot from Lynx. Now that we have a spot for Blade, I feel like that is the only other person that Lynx can help out entirely. Lynx and Luocha are fighting for that same spot, right? And I have said before that I do prefer Lynx over Luocha when it comes to a Blade team. But the fact that they add Bailu here, the fact that they add Japard, and I'm glad that these guys are in the meta, because they are. Bailu's able to help when there's no CC on the field. Japard is a god tier character when you are dealing with Simulated Universe. I know that's not what it is for, but it's still an almost impenetrable shield if you have a well-built Japard. So I'll keep it as this. I do think Lynx right now is losing value as time goes by, because we are getting better characters for these teams, like how Clara ended up getting Aventurine, which helps her out quite a bit with the follow-up tag boost and all that different type of stuff. But with Lynx, she did lose some value with his release. So I can 100% see her lumped up with these other 5-star sustains who do a little bit better in terms of sustaining the team, versus her, with her reason for not having as much sustain is because she has that added benefit of adding the taunt on, which that also takes her away from some other teams. Characters like Dan Heng and characters like Jingliu, they can't really be healed by Lynx, because then they get added with the taunt, which makes it a little bit harder to survive, especially when you have someone like Jingliu on the team who already sucks HP away from the team itself. So I can see why, with the inclusion of Aventurine, that she would get bumped down, or she would get lumped in with these guys, because although she has the utility, she doesn't really allow you, and I'm sorry if I keep covering the screen, my bad, but she doesn't really allow you to be able to heal certain characters. So she loses teams regardless from Aventurine's release, and she loses teams innately from having that taunt. So she only really has Blade versus Bailu and Japard, who we know are really good at doing their job with sustaining. Now going to the niche characters that we have at the current moment, we see that Argenti, Misha, and Serval are actually in the same grouping. What? I can see Argenti why. The reason Argenti's here is really the lack or the need for having multiple characters on the team. I know, or on the enemy side, I know for the most part that we have been seeing a lot of enemies pop up, but there are situations where you have someone like Yanqing who's able to give you the full field of swords. But the problem is when you do that and you knock out the swords, Yanqing is there by himself. So whenever Argenti's up on the field or his turn comes up, he doesn't really get a lot of energy from that. He doesn't get a crazy amount of boost from it because there's only one singular character versus all the energy he would have gotten if it was 5 enemies on the field. So he does have some situations where he doesn't really get to shine unless you are in pure fiction, where he's a god tier character. Misha being up here, this dude hurts like a crazy amount. At E6, he hurts for a crazy amount. And I haven't tried him recently. I think I might have to very soon because I do have mine built. But I know Serval has definitely been a character a lot of people have been using for some teams in replace for Jing Yuan, or overall she's just been a really great character. I haven't used her myself, so I can't really comment on most of this besides Argenti, but this is, in my opinion, I would just leave it as is. Guanaifin sadly still not getting bumped up to where my homies are at. The Dot family will never be reunited, which sucks, but sadly I can see why. She doesn't have as potent not only breaks as Luca and also Sampo with Wind Shear and Bleed, but I think the re-triggers that these guys give are actually a little bit stronger if I'm not wrong. But I'll have to wait and see. I do need to talk about this with someone else to see 100% why Guanaifin is still bumped down where Luca and Sampo are, but we'll end up seeing where that is. Wells at the current moment being a niche character, I can 100% agree. I think for the most part, a lot of people use him for sustain, and other than that, that's pretty much it. Sustain was usually a lot of people's, I guess, say fun pick to use, or sub DPS well, which we know at this current moment in time that him versus a lot of the other sub DPS or him versus a lot of the other sustains, he's not going to do a crazy amount. So right now, Welt is in a very niche spot. I can agree with this. Asta and Hanya not really used a lot in a bunch of different team comps unless you are, I say, stretched for supports and debuffers like these sets of characters. So unless you are stretched for those characters, you really wouldn't use these two. And then going into the next ones, Dan Heng, Herta, Himiko, Hook, Yanqing. I'm honestly, Hook is not one of the forgotten ones. That's actually very interesting to see. I've never seen anyone use Hook. Well, I definitely might look into that. I know people use Dan Heng because he still is an excellent single target damage dealer. Herta has her niche cases to be used. Himiko, same thing. Yanqing as well being at the bottom. I don't think many people can refute a lot of these placings. I don't know about Hook though. I've never seen anyone use Hook. Other than that, Su Shang is a tier below Guanaifin and Welt in regards to a lot of the different teams that you can put a lot of these different characters in the damage dealer spot, which you would use that if that was the case for not Guanaifin, but Su Shang in DPS. Her being a break character, of course, if you're going to use break, you'd probably use Luca for the most part. So I can see this as well. Fire Trailblazer, not a lot of people use them for sustain. Not a lot of people use them for a debuffer, only for Acheron, which is his best partner. But other than that, nobody really uses them for full-on sustain because we do have characters like Natasha, Lynx, and Gallagher as well, who was also given free at the time. So there's not really a lot of situations where you would use Trailblazer versus a lot of the other characters. Yukong, no one uses Yukong. I'm not going to even stress that enough. Natasha, early game pick. March 7th, early game pick. And then the forgotten ones are Arlen and Physical Trailblazer, which no one uses. Sadly, Arlen just has a anti-synergistic kit with himself. Like, he literally can't work with anybody. He wants low health, so you can't really give him a shield. Well, you can't give him a shield, but in my honest opinion, with how Arlen works, he wants himself low HP. And you can't give him a healer because then you lose damage bonus. You give him a shielder, which is good. Now he's able to stay alive. But that doesn't help his situation with not having enough damage though. So I don't know. Arlen's in a weird spot. Physical MC isn't going to win against a lot of these other characters. So that is pretty much it for the Prydwen tier list. I kind of like the tier list for a good bit. I think there's only minor changes I would change. With Ruame being in tier 0. With Sela being bumped up to tier 1. Shui potentially having a conversation to be bumped up 1 tier to 1.5. And then other than that, I think I'm pretty satisfied with this list for the most part. I can't really comment on this section of the DPS part, but other than that, this has been really cool looking at the Prydwen tier list. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching all the way to the end. Let me know what you think about the tier list and where you would put certain characters if you could, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, anything like that. Let me know in the comments below. Of course, keep it civil. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. See you on the next one, and peace.